Due to the cryptic nature and its use of nostalgic visual media style, analog horror has become an internet sensation over the recent years, with the genre containing notable headliners such as Gemini Home Entertainment, Local 58, and the Mandela Catalog. As a result of the popularity, analog horror as a whole has become oversaturated with content. Thus many entries have not gotten as much attention as they deserve. So that's why I would like to talk with you today about one of my favorite series. Originally starting to be uploaded to YouTube in 2022, it covers the events of humanity's attempts to deal with an alien threat that traveled from beyond our solar system. So join me now as we dive into Midwest Angelica. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. My name is TheoSpartic. For the course of this video, I will be going over each episode of Midwest Angelica to point out some details as well as give my theories on what is happening. I do still highly recommend you go and experience this series for yourself after watching. Now with that out of the way, let's get into the first episode. Our first episode, titled Call Now, greets us with a nostalgic 80s synth track and shows us an advertisement on Channel 3 about a new sci-fi horror called Midwest Angelica, listing off critic reviews calling it the ultimate in science fiction and a twister of biblical proportions. Now, not much really happens in this first episode aside from our introduction to the series, but there is one interesting thing that happens at the end. We get a brief flash of a tornado warning for Douglas and Washington County. This gives us a location of our series, as the two are neighboring counties in Nebraska, with Douglas County containing the city of Omaha. The description of the video also informs us that this tape was found at the Oklahoma Cherokee site, and that the film Midwest Angelica is yet to even be recovered. The second episode, titled Home, shows us a recording owned by a group called Home. It contains video documentation from 1985 of NASA's first discovery of a celestial body. The first footage from June, narrated by a Dr. Lucas Michaels, gives us an account of the observation of an object which they designate AZ001. They note that AZ001 is 66.3 kilometers in diameter. Then in November, they have found that AZ001 is, or at least was, alive, essentially a corpse drifting through the cosmos. Jumping to March of 1987, their calculations reveal that the trajectory of AZ001 will reach the vicinity of Earth by 1999. This revelation causes NASA to form a group dubbed HOME, an acronym for Heavenly Operations and Material Examination. This group being made to study everything about AZ001, make contact with it in 1999, and hide its existence from the public. On top of all this, Dr. Michaels is to be placed as leader of the group, which we are then shown a screen informing us that Dr. Michaels went missing in 1989 and has still not been found. Skipping to August of 1995, in the absence of Dr. Michaels, a Dr. Connor now informs us that the Lab of Psychological Contamination has observed AZ001 to be emitting the same brainwaves produced by humans when in a state of deep sleep. Puzzled by this find, they continue to research it further. Right on schedule, in January of 1999, AZ001 finally makes its appearance in high Earth orbit. Then, as it starts descending into low Earth orbit, more detailed pictures are finally able to be captured. We then learn that a piece of AZ001 has broken off, the separated piece causing strange radio propagations to be picked up in the atmosphere. which is noted as unlikely to be caused by sporadic E, an event in the Earth's ionosphere that can result in very long-distance radio communication. As the alpha chunk makes its descent through the atmosphere, it is observed by numerous radar and tracking units that confirm its touchdown at these coordinates, located on a small farm in Wheeler, Nebraska. After that, we cut to a home recording from 2 weeks later, on January 16th, of their team's journey to the rural landing site and the subsequent first contact with the alpha chunk. Left horrified in the experience of what happens next, they panic and try to neutralize this threat by means of fire, though of course, this only ends up angering it. Now, there are some important details to note in this episode. Firstly, the disappearance of Dr. Michaels. Second, I believe that the radio propagation in the atmosphere was something similar to sporadic E, thus giving this entity the ability to communicate with the alpha chunk over a long distance. And lastly, of course, we see that AZ-001 is no longer in that state of deep sleep as we had thought from its recorded brainwaves. The diameter of AZ-001 is 66.3 kilometers, the number 663 being an angel number, the number 6 representing man and his imperfections, and the number 3 representing the Divine Trinity. 663 encourages you to acknowledge your imperfections, seek forgiveness, and align with the divine, an important detail to keep in mind considering how the series progresses. In this episode, we are given a brief snippet of an ad for a local pizza place, before cutting to a commercial urging viewers from the listed counties to call if they have experienced any strange symptoms, such as insomnia or strange dreams, discounting these occurrences due to the use of an experimental pesticide in the area. The description of the video states it was recorded in 1995 and no known pesticide tests took place that year. Due to the year being so close to when AZ-001 was supposed to make contact, I believe the symptoms listed in the commercial can be attributed to AZ-001's influence. The next episode takes place right before Holmes' first contact with the Alpha Chunk, at the coordinates of Jones Ranch, a mere 5 minutes from the landing site. Avery Jones is awoken around 4:30 a.m. to the sound of their dogs barking, to which the son, Colin, begins recording shortly after.
Colin, grab Max. I'm going to get the rifle.
What happened to Rocky?
I don't know.
What happened?
As Colin waits for his father to grab their rifle, he continues to record and catches what appears to be a piece of the chunk fly towards the camera, after which the next minutes of footage are too degraded to view, with only a few frames being discernible. Gunshots are then heard as we see Colin running towards his father's location. We then receive a notice that Avery Jones has been assimilated. Colin hastily heads towards the house to check on his mother, only to find that she has been assimilated as well.
Mom?
In his attempt to make a break for it, he stops to see the silhouette of an infected, mutated form walking towards him, which I assume to be his father. as the recording cuts to a whole month later of a now completely infected ranch, with the camera somehow still recording and charging, as can be seen in the top right of the screen. The description of the video states that little is known about the events at Starfield Ranch, and that it is unknown as to how the camera continued to operate all that time later. In this episode, we get a brief bit of classified footage from Home's xenobiology research group, talking about their experiments with the contagion on various life forms. Deer and coyotes producing minimal to no results. After an experiment with an onion, however, they discover how it affects the cells. According to the various findings in their research, they come to the conclusion that the contagion has some degree of intelligence. This raises the concern that it poses a very clear threat to the populace of the United States. The research team recommends that the contagion be destroyed by any means necessary, dubbing it with the code name Starkill. The video description also informs us that the recording was discovered inside a barricaded exam room in the Red Oaks Veterinary Clinic, and the contagion referenced in the video is yet to be discovered. In this episode, titled Phantoms, we are met with the bright screen of an incident report requiring special clearance to access under penalty of death. It starts off with the documentation of Dr. Evans' return to the Alpha Chunk on the 20th of January for further analysis.
This is it, right here. I want this area marked, just for sample collection.
On it. Marking area, over.
That's all we're gonna need. Request retrieval team.
Requesting retrieval team at Alpha Chunk Point A, over.
We are able to draw from this brief interaction that Dr. Evans is most likely already infected by the Starkill. Unfortunately, as everyone is still oblivious to this, he returns to the psychological contamination lab at Home HQ, where he drops off his collected samples of AZ-001 in the storage room. He then goes to the supply closet where he strangely took longer than normal to obtain the container for the water cooler. Following this, he pours 2 cups of water and has a conversation with Dr. O'Connor, who is the lead of the psychological contamination research.
I brought you some water. Thought you might have wanted a cup.
Thanks, Andy. Were you able to get the results you wanted?
Fortunately, much of the alpha chunk was too necrotic to really get any good data and sample from it. Likely have to find some alpha chunk connected to the main body of AD-001.
Sorry to hear that. I think I might be able to get you the new data you want once you figure it out. But I'll have to get back to you tomorrow on that.
That's alright. We can discuss more about it tomorrow after the meeting.
Later, the footage says that Dr. Evans starts to show unusual behavior. And then he departs to another section of the facility. We find him in storage room 3B for unknown reasons, where he gets into an altercation with someone upon trying to leave. Eventually, Dr. Evans is terminated and his body is brought in for autopsy, during which they find his entire body had been infected by the Starkill. And and they rule his death as an assassination by a third party. Dr. O'Connor has also disappeared following the incident, and a vial containing a sample of AZ-001 has also gone missing. The description of the video tells us that this event is believed to have irreparably impeded Holmes' ability to study AZ-001. This tape was found in an underwater bunker 12 miles west of Lincoln, Nebraska, and one of the walls of the bunker was painted with a logo similar to the one used by Holmes. First greeted by the programming schedule of Channel 17 for January 30th, with nothing seeming out of the ordinary, we are then shown an invitation for the Long Pine Church to their weekly service on Sunday. Following that, they give a thank you to all the volunteers helping with the service. The description informs us that this broadcast aired during the week of January 25th, the same week as the incident at Home HQ. One other important detail to note is that the list of volunteers contains Ray O'Connor, our missing Dr. O'Connor from the last episode. This episode, titled Zazil, begins by introducing us to the recovered body cam footage of officers Sam Page and Andrew Webster, who were both killed in the line of duty on February 12th of 1999. We are also then informed that a missing persons broadcast had aired on the 8th. Starting off the events of the night that the officers lost their lives, the Long Pine Police Dispatch received a 911 call from an unknown ID.
911, please state your emergency.
I'm at 876 Pine Lane in Long Pine, right next to the church. Now, I can't really say for certain, but there's some kind of sacrifice going on.
Okay, we'll be right there. Could you elaborate, please?
Yeah, it's a human sacrifice. I hear screams. It seems to be like a pagan ritual or something of the sort.
Okay, just hold tight. We'll be right there. Please stay on the line.
Officers Page and Webster are then dispatched to the church. Upon entering, Webster begins to take some haunting pictures. A gift of the blood of an angel, phantom in its appearance, but insides churn with flesh and blood of the stars. The blessed walk in silence, blissfully closer to his sacred realm, ascend beyond mortals. We have become apostles of Zazil. Altar, an offering of souls to the body of the fallen. Reconstruction of God's realm, infinite in its cycle of life. Death but a moment of passing time. He is infinity incarnate. Following these cryptic findings, we are shown the last appearance of Officer Page and are informed his body has still not been recovered. Proceeding past whatever the altercation was that led to Page's disappearance, we find Officer Webster outside as he searches for the source of the disturbance, pausing in shock as he notices a sort of hellish monolith. He then captures the following photos. As he continues on, he just can't seem to shake the feeling that someone is following him. Finally, he comes to a clearing where he is attacked by someone clearly infected by the Starkill. In the last moments of footage, as the camera lays on the ground, we are able to see the shadow of a man come into view. At the end of the tape, we are told that said man is yet to be identified, that the body of Officer Webster was found redacted, and a CIA operative named Robert Spencer assumed command of the situation and threatened the police department to stay quiet. The description of the video also tells us that the tape was found in the ruins of a house in Stewart, Nebraska, just like the last episode. And most of the buildings in Long Pine were destroyed, with a large crater being discovered where the church had been. Now there are some important details to note from this episode. First off, every person listed in the missing persons broadcast was also on the church bulletin from the last episode. Second, the writings that Officer Webster took photos of reference Zazil, a demon for which on the Day of Atonement a scapegoat would be sacrificed that bore the sins of the Jewish people, as stated in the book of Leviticus, giving us an idea of what AZ-001 might actually be. And lastly, we are introduced to a new character by the name of Robert Spencer, who comes to play a larger role in the story. In this episode, we are shown the stages of Starkill infection as discovered by Holmes' Xenobiology Research Group as of February 23rd of 1999. Stage 1, Sustenance Hunt, is when the Starkill begins to absorb the most available biomass in order to survive until later stages. Upon reaching Stage 2, Intelligence Accumulation, it then targets the most intelligent species available for assimilation. Stage 3, Self-Replication, the Starkill is now able to form enough biomass to manufacture new entities from itself using biomass hubs, including altars that produce smaller Starkill forms, and temples capable of producing larger life forms. A fourth stage has been theorized based on critical mass calculations, and it is unknown what will happen when the Starkill reaches critical mass, but the network is predicted to reach this size within 1 year. Starting out, we are greeted by the logo referenced in the video description of episode Phantoms, now finding it to be the logo of Home Delta, with this recording being approved by Admiral Nero. The triumphant Operation Homebound now being complete, we are greeted by a secure broadcast approved by Admiral Nero.
As per the request of Admiral Nero of Home Delta Division, this report is to be given to the Select Committee consisting of the Secretary of Defense and the National Aeronautics Space Administration on the date of April 14, 1999. This report is classified as top secret in an effort to preserve national security. On April 13th, Home Delta forces managed to successfully eliminate all known traces of the Starkill threat. While some Starkill spores remain in the atmosphere around operational zones in the Midwest, these spores were discovered to be inert without the presence of a central biomass hub. Research is now underway at various institutions across the United States to uncover the Starkill's true nature and functionality. Preliminary research performed by Home Delta has led to the hypotheses surrounding the possible origins for AZ-001, or possible instances of AZ-001's arrival to Earth in the past. Throughout written history, world cultures and religions describe some variation of an apocalyptic deluge, in which a great destructive force violently brings civilization to an end. Researchers believe this deluge is representative of the organism known as AZ-001 and the subsequent Starkill infestation. It is believed this civilization-ending event occurs in cycles, though much remains uncertain at this time. However, what we do know is that the cycle of destruction and violence has finally been brought to an end with the might of the United States military. We may even have stopped the power of God himself with just a fraction of our military capabilities. Find solace in that fact that we have nothing more to fear in this universe, for we have become stronger than God. The oppressed have become the oppressor, and only the oppressors have the freedom to choose peace and end the cycle of violence. Admiral Nero, I commend your efforts. You lurked among the shadows as you played your hand. I'm fully aware. You may try to kill me now, but know the man speaking in front of this community right now is actually a death row inmate scheduled for execution. I too am playing your game, Nero, and I'm prepared.
This massive plot twist now thrown upon us, we learn this wasn't General Piso, but a death row inmate, assassinated by an unknown third party before he could reveal anything further, and that General Piso's whereabouts remain unknown. Following that, we are brought to the underground of Home HQ and shown something truly horrifying.
The world's a stage, and all the men and women really players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts, his act being 7 ages. Piso was careless. Now you are the last of your kin left alive in this facility. But the truth cannot be set free. Home has completed its goal, the complete eradication of the Starkill. That is the story that I've ever so carefully woven, but the truth lies obscured beyond the veil. My dear child, there is no need to worry, for all is right in the world.
Despair begins to set in as we see another chunk of AZ-001 has broken free and begins falling towards the earth.
Sing your last song, my children. Sing your cry to the universe, how you long to live forever through the sound of a heartbeat. Oh, how even I find such sounds to be soothing. A mathematical purity, the expression of the universe's logical blueprint in a tangible form. Music enriches the soul. It is truly humanity's crowning achievement. Now, my children, let your voices echo through the vastness of space. Let your souls sing with great spirit for all eternity.
And as this episode draws to a close, we watch as an underwater craft approaches the landing site of the beta chunk. We learn from the video description that this tape was discovered during a dive into the Kansas City major cavity, along with some other items such as computational equipment. This video also gives us numerous things to go over. First off, we are finally given our first showing of Home Delta, and are shown they've been doing things behind the scenes. Second, we are introduced to 2 characters, Admiral Nero and General Piso, drawing a correlation to Gaius Calpurnius Piso, a Roman emperor who was instrumental in a massive plot to overthrow Emperor Nero, pointing us towards a struggle going on between the two over what will happen to AZ-001. Third, the first part of Nero's dialogue comes from the All the World's a Stage monologue from Shakespeare's book, The 7 Ages of Man, referencing how Nero sees humanity merely as his playthings. In this short episode, we are greeted by the title screen of Channel 9, which covers the Kansas City area, as we then transition to the weather forecast for the day. The person watching pauses the video as they notice something that shouldn't be there in the top right of the screen. The video description tells us that this tape was recorded by Kansas City resident Marcus Lucan, in May of 1999 and found alongside another tape filmed by Lucan in June of 1999. One very important thing to note is the thing flying in the background of the recording was most likely responsible for the Kansas City cavity referenced in the description of the last episode. Now jumping back to February, we are shown an analysis report from the Psychological Contamination Lab. As they are trying to research how exactly AZ-001 communicates with the pieces of it on Earth, with new findings indicating that it communicates between separate instances on an information plane parallel to local reality, and we are given an explanation by Dr. Stanley Vega regarding these findings.
While we previously had a rough understanding of how the Starkill infection assimilates foreign biomatter, and that its methodology for doing so seemingly depends on what intentions it has, we, until recently, failed to understand how different pieces of the alpha chunk seemingly all become aware of new information, even if its pieces are long distances apart from each other. Recent experimentation revealed that certain alpha chunk samples emanate a unique energy signature not previously encountered in prior studies. We've discovered that this energy signature becomes more detectable in parts of the alpha chunk where large concentrations of what we fittingly called Podolsky neurons are present. Because of their presence in AZ-001, we are of the belief that these Podolsky neurons are part of the entity's central nervous system. Specifically, they are responsible for transmitting information signals to different parts of the entity's body. The observation that different pieces of the alpha chunk all become aware of the same information simultaneously, despite their masses not being physically connected, leads us to believe that Podolsky neuron signals operate on a principle similar to quantum entanglement.
The researchers dubbed this network of neurons as the Akashic Plane, in reference to the Akashic Records, a compendium of all memories, thoughts, and events that have occurred since the beginning of time. We then see a flash of what is mostly redacted, presumably saying something like the Akashic Plane may be the key to understanding or destroying AZ-001. We are then shown footage of Dr. Stanley Vega as they experiment on him with the Akashic Plane. He is then asked to re-enter his personal information as they begin Test 2, and he believes he is only being screened for the Starkill infection. He is once again asked to re-enter his information for the next test. As the researchers note, Dr. Vega expresses intimate knowledge of someone named John Carlyle. As the final test comes to a close, we are now told that Dr. Vega's entire The video description gives a string of letters and numbers that, when decoded from base 64, translate to the word knowledge. Now let's go over some details and symbolism I derived from this episode. When Dr. Vega is asked to re-enter his personal information, first, his birthday changes from 6/7/1958 to 6/7/1946, which is the date that BBC went back on the air for the first time since World War II. Second, when again asked to re-enter his information, he puts his name down as John Carlyle, who we know as one of the volunteers at Long Pine Church. Vega also changes his birthday again to 4/10/1946, which is when the FCC approved the first expansion of long-distance phone calls since World War II, which are some details with important symbolism considering the theme of this episode. And lastly, when Dr. Vega begins to only say Easter, it's a reference to a character Cosmo from Chainsaw Man, whose abilities give her access to all the knowledge in the universe, but at the same time, limiting ability to think, to the point that she can only say Halloween. Starting off, we are greeted by the logo of Home Delta, and then a recording of Dr. Robert Spencer commences.
Today marks the 12-year anniversary of the Babylon Project and the founding of Home Delta. The date is March 13th, 1999. As director of the Babylon Project, reporting to the General Commanding Director of Home Delta, I, Dr. Robert Spencer, am obliged to construct this full report detailing the Babylon Project's progress as of March of 1999. Since the Annunciation event on January 28th and the subsequent elimination of Dr. Evans, the contamination of Home HQ has continued to progress at an exponential rate. We estimate that around 75% of home staff have been infected and continue operation as phantoms. Further, through routine checks of Home HQ, we have determined that the Starkill biomass has reached the Temple classification. We believe that Wraith classification entities may be birthed by the Temple in as soon as 12 days. My recommendation would be to gather the final samples for research and begin Operation Homebound promptly. The Deathbringer squads are prepared for immediate action.
We are then transitioned to footage of a conversation between Dr. Spencer and a new character by the name of Dr. Churchill at the Babel site.
Dr. Churchill, we're preparing for the final descent into Home HQ now. Mission will commence in 48 hours.
Good. Spencer, I have a request.
What is it, sir?
Dr. Stanley Vega of the Xenobiology Group has been researching the Akashic Plane. I need you to retrieve him and his work, but under no circumstances should you allow him to learn the true nature of Home Delta.
Understood. What should be done if he's already infected?
He won't be. He works in the BSL-4 lab. We've determined that sector to be clean, and it's projected to be clean for at least 10 more days. If he's visibly infected, eliminate him. Otherwise, we will conduct a SIM test to determine if he has phantom blood. Retrieve his lab assistant too, Dr. Solomon Ezra. Same rules apply.
If you don't mind me asking, sir, what are you planning with him?
My plans with Vega have nothing to do with your job. This is for your own good, Spencer. The most I can tell you is that it involves research into the Akashic Plane. Speaking of which, have you retrieved the new info on Lucas Michaels?
Yes, I have. It's in the data room. I think you'll be interested in our findings. We're not sure what to make of it yet.
Good. I'm looking forward to it. When you return, we'll run the SIN test at Nazareth site and continue operations as planned. We're on schedule.
Understood. And for Operation Homebound?
It will commence April 4th.
And with that, Dr. Spencer's team begins their raid of Home HQ in an effort to evacuate Dr. Vega. Descending deeper into the facility, they are able to observe the extent of the infection. Upon finding Dr. Vega, they inform him of the situation and exfil to the Nazareth site, where they begin the SIN testing to verify that him and his cohort are not infected.
Vega, I'm assuming you're familiar with the process of a SIN test, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, great. So I'm going to ask you a series of questions and you are to answer truthfully. Once the test is complete, we'll know if you are infected or not. That being said, here's the first question.
They proceed to then ask various questions to seemingly test for nuances of humanity in his answers. After completing the test, he is determined to not be infected, and they begin questioning his colleague.
First question. You work at a competitive company. The promotion comes down to either you or your coworker. What do you do?
I would work hard and try to beat him. I would think, why should he be the one to get a promotion? I, of course, would be the one doing the work. He was just lucky.
Dr. Ezra then gives some inhuman answers, and as they try to terminate him, Dr. Ezra retaliates.
And what about your concept of infinity? Can you see it clearly?
Yes, I can.
Code 66, calling. Administer asphyxiation agent.
Code 66. Error. Task cannot be completed. Error.
Following the incident, we are given a medical report on Dr. Spencer, showing that due to Dr. Vega's assault, he is now infected. As he is too valuable to Home Delta's operation, he is put into cryosleep. We are then taken back to the Babel site as Dr. Churchill has a one-sided conversation with Dr. Spencer.
Spencer, I know you can hear me, but I'm afraid you won't be able to respond now. This wasn't according to the scenario, and I shouldn't have let Ezra into the Nazareth site. Fortunately, Ezra has been eliminated, and the Nazareth site is under strict lockdown. Unfortunately, because you were infected, the best we can do is slow the infection as much as possible. Which means we had to put you into cryosleep. Your knowledge is too valuable. Listen, Spencer, I'm researching something important with the Starkill. A way to perhaps reverse the infection using Starkill samples. It could even grant immortality. It will be done by April 4th, and on that day, humanity will prevail and defeat the Starkill threat. Project Babylon will be complete, and we will then be able to initiate Operation Homebound. In my effort to understand the cosmos, I made a grave mistake, and I'm only now seeing the weight of my sins unfold before my eyes. God, please forgive me.
The description of the video, when decoded from base 64, translates to betrays. Some other important details from this video are how the CIA agent from the end of the Zazil episode was actually Dr. Spencer of Home Delta, and how Dr. Churchill references research into a possible reversal of the Starkill infection. At the start of this episode, we are given a flashback from 1986 of a conversation between Dr. Michaels, Dr. Churchill, and Dr. Spencer. About strange dreams Dr. Michael has been having ever since the first observation of AZ-001 orbiting Jupiter. They then question him if he thinks there's any correlation, which he states he's not sure, but he does feel like it's speaking to him, and he sometimes feels like another person altogether. Describing how he feels like he's been here before a long time ago at the beginning of the universe, which they inform Dr. Michaels that they will be needing more scans of his dreams and appoint him the leader of Home. Though Dr. Michaels is never made aware of the creation of Home's sister organization, Home Delta, led by Dr. Spencer and Dr. Churchill. Following this, we are shown footage of a lecture about Project Babylon's evolutionary overview.
AZ-001, or the Starkill, whatever you wish to call it, is a collective hive mind. It's one singular organism. It's all connected, and it speaks to itself telepathically. What might have appeared as the rotting organs of a once-forgotten deity has now shown its true colors in the form of a highly advanced singular organism comparable to a supercomputer. Through this network we're calling the Akashic Plane, which we've derived from the anthroposophic theory of the Akashic Records, AZ-001, the evolved God, can contain and process memories of everything that it has ever assimilated. As such, its intelligence and wisdom is beyond comprehension. It is an evolved life form, to put it simply. Humanity in its current state has no way of even entertaining the possibility of a fair fight. AZ-001 is simply better than us on all fronts. That's why we began Project Babylon here at Home Delta. That's why we're prepared to level the playing field by bringing humanity to its next stage of evolution, using the Starkill's own biological framework. Evolution has been the mission of Project Babylon since the very beginning. But now, thanks to the results of the Home experiment, we've gathered enough data to begin the first tangible steps of this artificial evolution of humanity.
Now with that idea of how AZ-001 operates in our mind, we observe the training tape for the Deathbringer soldiers used in Operation Homebound. With that realization of the extent that Home Delta is willing to go to in order to understand the Starkill, we transition to research documentation of the Starkill's stem cells. Being informed that augmented host cells can increase overall durability as well as provide immunity to the Starkill, although most test subjects were killed while attempting the merge with the stem cells. With recent tests finding that with aid of cybernetics, subjects could indeed survive the merging. And thus, Home Delta's Deathbringer Militia was born.
Spencer, it's me. I've given up my rank as Admiral of Home Delta.
That title is going to you in preparation of Operation Homebound. You will have control over the Tower of Babel, and you'll be able to control the Deathbringer squads entirely with your mind. The pieces have been in place since the beginning. It's unfortunate that you ended up in this state, but this is the only way. Once I finalize Project Babylon, it's all up to you. This battle is yours to decide.
Dr. Churchill now stepping down from lead of Home Delta, we are informed that Dr. Spencer is being given control of Babylon and the Deathbringers, with the battle being his to decide now. The description of this video gives us another cipher that translates to mans. When paired with the other translated ciphers, we get the beginning of a sentence. Knowledge betrays mans, pointing us towards a complete phrase within the upcoming episodes. Some important details from this episode are first that AZ-001 was able to exert its influence as early back as its first sighting, making sense as it's been referred to as a Zazil, with its first two letters of its home designation being AZ. Second, we are given the revelation that the Deathbringers were never human, but instead amalgamations of humans, cybernetics, and the Starkill stem cells. And lastly, that Dr. Spencer is now in control of the entirety of the Project Babylon. And with that, we reach the conclusion of Midwest Angelica for now. A both intriguing and haunting tale of the Starkill's takeover and the subsequent attempted retaliation of humanity against it. With every entry getting more and more desperate, hopefully humanity will pull through in the end and prevail over AZ-001. I am extremely excited to see where the series will go in the future. But until then, my name is TheoSpartic, and this has been a deep dive of Midwest Angelica. As always, thank you for watching, and have a good night.